All right, so, there's been a lot of talk lately about this phone call between the U.S. and Russia.
Yeah.
And
Big news.
it seems like there might be a potential break in the fighting coming out of this. And today we're going to take a deep dive into this potential pause, specifically looking at attacks on Ukraine's energy infrastructure.
Right.
What's going on with the Kremlin and the White House and what it might mean for the bigger picture.
Yeah, it's really fascinating to see such a pinpointed potential agreement, right?
Yeah.
So, following the call between Presidents Trump and Putin,
Right.
the Kremlin came out and confirmed that Russia has agreed to a 30-day pause specifically on attacks targeting Ukraine's energy infrastructure.
Okay.
So, we're talking power grids, heating plants, all the things keeping the lights on over there.
So it wasn't just like a general hope for, less fighting going on, but a very specific proposal from the U.S. to focus on energy infrastructure. And Putin agreed to that.
Yeah.
I mean, what do you think the thinking is there? Why start with this particular area?
Well, I think you've hit a really interesting point there.
Yeah.
Energy infrastructure is super critical.
Right.
For both the military and civilians, particularly as we head into winter.
Yeah.
I mean, attacking this stuff can really have a huge impact.
Yeah.
So maybe the U.S. sees this as a way to kind of address those immediate humanitarian concerns.
Right.
Maybe try and build a bit of trust before moving on to further talks.
Right.
It's kind of interesting that it avoids directly impacting military capabilities. In other areas, at least for now.
For now, yeah. It seems very strategic.
Yeah.
It's not just a one-way street, though, right? There's a pretty big condition attached to all of this.
Oh, absolutely.
Okay.
The Kremlin has made it crystal clear this 30-day pause on their end.
Yeah.
It depends entirely on Ukraine also stopping any attacks on Russian energy infrastructure.
Got it.
It's a reciprocal thing,
Tit for tat.
Yeah. Totally focused on this specific category of targets.
Right.
So, for anyone trying to wrap their head around this potential impact.
Yeah. You really got to remember it needs buy-in from both sides.
Both sides. Okay.
Yeah.
So this isn't that, widespread ceasefire that I think a lot of people are hoping for.
Right.
This is a much more limited agreement.
Yeah.
What do the White House have to say about how big of a deal this really is?
Well, their statement seems to echo that sentiment.
Okay.
They're calling it an energy and infrastructure ceasefire, framing it as like a first step.
Okay.
Like a foundation to build on.
Okay.
They're thinking beyond just this pause,
So what are the next steps then? I mean, it sounds like this could be more than just everyone taking a break from attacking, power lines for a month.
Exactly. The White House talked about these immediate technical negotiations for a maritime ceasefire in the Black Sea.
Oh, wow.
And then from there, the goal is to try and move toward a full ceasefire.
Okay.
And then eventually, discussions around a lasting peace agreement.
Huge.
It's a phased approach, right? They're trying to build momentum gradually.
Step by step.
And they're not wasting any time, are they? I mean, according to the White House, the timeline on these next steps is pretty immediate.
That's right. The indication was that these negotiations would start right away.
Wow.
Which, suggests a real push to capitalize on this initial agreement.
But we're still waiting on a big piece of this puzzle to fall into place, right?
Yeah.
Ukraine hasn't signed off on all of this yet.
That's the big question mark right now.
Right.
Russia has agreed. Conditionally, the U.S. is, kind of facilitating things.
Right.
But we just don't know yet if Ukraine is going to agree to this very specific and limited ceasefire and then all the steps that come after it.
Right.
Their strategic goals and how all this fits into their defense. It's going to be key.
So let me try and sum all this up.
Okay.
We've got a potential 30-day halt in attacks on Ukraine's energy infrastructure.
Right.
Which came about because of a proposal from the U.S. that Russia accepted.
Yeah.
But it all hinges on Ukraine agreeing to do the same, pause their attacks on Russian energy infrastructure as well. Yeah.
And the White House is really framing this as just the very beginning of a much larger negotiation process.
Exactly. That conditional nature is so important.
Yeah.
This could be a real de-escalation in a very specific and impactful area.
Right.
But whether it actually leads to, less fighting overall comes down to Ukraine's response and how successful these upcoming negotiations actually are.
It really does make you think.
Yeah.
Could this, limited agreement, if it even happens, be the start of something much bigger like actual peace talks?
Yeah.
Or is it just a temporary break in the fighting?
Right.
I guess we'll have to wait and see, but we'll definitely be following it closely.
Absolutely.
Thanks for joining us for this deep dive.
Of course.
We'll see you next time.
Sounds good.